Fellas, AC here. Welcome to another review. Welcome to episode number 500. We've made it together. After 7 years, 9 months, we have reached this amazing milestone of 500 videos. Wow. Now, in the last video, I asked you for suggestions on what should I do? What kind of video should I do? And I also told you that I have a fair idea of what I wanted to do. Now, most of you all commented on one thing, and that is you wanted me to do a video about myself, my perspective on the fragcomm, story about me, how I felt about joining the fragcomm, that sort of thing. You want to know about me, and that wasn't in my plan. So what I've done is I've postponed my plan. The planned video will be 501, and I will do exactly as you tell me. Your wish is my command. So I will do a video telling you about a little bit about myself, how I sort of excuse me, moved through my fragrance journey, how I've seen the fragcomm and stuff like that. But before I go into that, I want to say a huge amount of thank you, because without your support, without your love, without your care for me as a human being, this wouldn't have been possible. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And the comments, when you read the comments, the last video's comments, when you read the comments, the one thing that shows or shines through is the enormous amount of care and love you have for me. And that just shines through. And I've decided to obviously do a video like you have requested. So I've divided the video into 8 parts, and I'll sort of walk you through how I got into fragrances, and a little bit about myself, and how I've seen the fragcomm grow, basically the story of fragcomm. I'd like to tell you the story of fragcomm, and along with the story of myself, because this is about the fragcomm and me. I'm just part of that fragcomm. So, as you requested, first let's do that. A little bit about me. So, the reason I don't talk a lot about myself is because I grew up in India. I'm a middle class sort of a person. I was brought up in a middle class family, and there's one of the things that in India you'll find in India is people generally don't talk about themselves too much, you know. And then when I moved to England, this is one similarity. There's a lot of similarities between British culture and Indian culture, and one of the things that people don't do in England is to talk about themselves or brag about themselves, or spend too much time, you know, talking about themselves. It's sort of a very, very polite society, Britain, and there's a lot of courtesy involved. People say sorry even if they haven't done anything, and one of the things about British culture is low key. You keep yourself low. Your you know, what you are is basically known to very few people, and you don't spend too much time talking about yourself. That's the reason I don't do it, because it's just my upbringing and the culture that I live in. So, but since you all want to know, so I'll go through some of the things about me. So, the best way to do it is to talk about hobbies and passions. What drives us, what connects us is our hobby, our passion. So basically, I'm a normal Joe Blogs. I mean, my biggest sort of passion in life has been cricket. I was born in India, so people in India either watch cricket or play cricket or both. So my biggest passion is both. I play as well as watch cricket, more play than watch. And when I came to England, it was like, you know, a kid in a candy shop. Cricket is very organized in Britain, in England, and I just joined wherever I worked in many parts of Britain, and I just joined whatever cricket club I could, and I scored runs by bucket loads. I'm a top order batsman, still am, and I'm a very good fielder. Used to be very good. Nowadays, my eyesight is weakening, my body is also getting old. So I'm not as good as I used to be, but I still manage to take some good catches. So that's my biggest passion in life, cricket. right? The second passion in my life, I would say, is reading. I have a bigger collection of books than fragrances. I absolutely adore reading because I believe that reading great literature opens up your mind. So I'm more into non-fiction. I also read some fiction, but primarily I read about sciences. I'm a man of sciences. I graduated in mathematics and computer science, so I quite like reading about sciences. When I was in college, I liked reading about physics. I was very interested in physics, but then I graduated using mathematics and computer science, so I love reading about mathematics and computer science. Initially, it was about work because I used a lot of mathematics in my work. I was a programmer, and those systems use something called a DNA, sort of a binding logic, which is known as algorithms. And one of the things that you do when you design algorithms is use a lot of mathematical recipes. Algorithm itself is a recipe, and it uses mathematical logic. So I used a lot of mathematics in my career, initial part of my career. That has changed now because I moved from a programmer to a systems guy to somebody's advice came through and said, you know, why you're so good at presentation and communication. So why don't you do consulting? So I moved into consulting, and it's a world of difference, but I still do technology consulting. So I don't use mathematics too much at the moment, but mathematics is my passion. So yeah, mathematics basically now has become my passion. Reason being, I'm very interested in advances in computer science. So fields like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, cyber technology. So I'm very, active in the cybersecurity world. And one of the things I work with is cryptography, which uses mathematics, prime number mathematics, to hide messages from being disrupted or interrupted by the bad guys. So that's the kind of mathematics I use. I became more interested in mathematics, and now it's like a passion rather than work. So I used to study mathematics for work, now it's my passion. And you would find this odd, but once you get into mathematics, it becomes a beautiful obsession. Not obsession, a beautiful sort of thing to do. It's a beautiful subject. And I used to be very scared of mathematics when I was a schoolboy. But if you are like that, don't worry. One of the beautiful things in life is to discover the beauty of complex subjects. And if you're interested, some of the best books in mathematics are freely available on the internet. You can go and have a look. But mathematics cannot be read. It has to be done. You have to do mathematics to become better at it. But some good books some good authors. Let's talk about authors, because then you can find your own way. So one of the biggest and the most wonderful, lucid writers of mathematics in current times is Terence Tao. Terence Tao is known as the Mozart of mathematics. He has, I think he's on YouTube big time. He has written some amazing books. Read those books if you're very interested in mathematics. It's a hard subject, but once you crack the code, it's the beauty of mathematics will just, take you to a different level. The other thing I'm very passionate about is chess. Some people have told you, you probably have conversed with me about chess. So chess is one of my early passions. When I was in school, we had a chess club, and I was literally, chess is about remembering patterns. And once you start playing chess, you realize it's all about patterns, and the more you remember, the better you'll be, right? Let me give you an example. I'm never far away from a chessboard. Let me give an example and connect it to a fragrance thingy so it doesn't become boring. So this is a chessboard, okay? Now, as you can see, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, right? And there are 8 ranks here. This is a file. The king sits here, E. The E file is for the king, white, if you're playing white. Just a simple example. And in front of the E will be a pawn, yeah? And that pawn is known as the E2 pawn, right? If you move the E2 pawn to E4, you're sending a very clear message to your opponent, that is the black guy, the person who's playing black, is e4 is the most aggressive move on the chessboard. The most aggressive, e4, if you're playing white. Why? The moment you move this pawn up, you open this diagonal ends up here, right? What is that? h5. What sits in d? The queen, right? If you put the queen here, the e pawn is for the king. As you can see, the e file is for the king. So you're literally attacking the king in the very first move or second move. You can also, there's a bishop sitting here on the f file, and you can move the bishop all the way to here and attack the king, right? And this is why e4 is considered one of the most aggressive moves in chess. Why did I tell you all of this? There are two ways of playing chess. One is to win, that is, bring out your bishop and try to intimidate your opponent, or know what each move does. And this is exactly what perfumery is about. So let's connect perfumery and chess, because fun begins when you can connect things. So in perfumery, I've done this before. In perfumery, it's all about notes, right? So how do you train your nose? Just like mathematics and chess, you practice. And the best way to practice is to get yourself loads and loads of essential oils, right? And let's say while you're thinking about fragrances or looking at fragrances, you realize a pattern. And the pattern is grapefruit and vetiver. So you mix grapefruit and vetiver, 1 drop each, and try it and see why it is such a pattern which keeps coming back again and again. Similarly, you can do one of the most amazing combinations in perfumery is vanilla mixed with lavender. You mix vanilla and lavender, you get a beautiful smell. Why do you get that? And what does it smell like? Mix it and see for yourself. Similarly, sandalwood, patchouli, a winning combination. This combination is there in so many expensive fragrances. What does it smell like? You know, so this is exactly the chess example I gave you. What happens when you move e4, right? The pawn to e4. What happens? Why do you actually do that? This is the connection. This is why I gave the example. It might sound a bit complex, but there's a connection between all things. And that connection is a subject that I'm very interested in. So I'll take pause from chess, I'll come back to chess in a minute. So that connection is called system thinking. The end-to-end thought process, or the art of thinking end-to-end, is called systems thinking. And that system thinking is such a valuable skill if you're a white-collar worker, or if you want to become a white-collar worker. If you can get into systems thinking or critical thinking, you would be amazing. Your value will go up, your wages will go up, and the satisfaction you get from doing projects will go up. Excuse me. And if you're interested in reading books on system thinking, then one of the best authors I can talk about is Fritjof Capra. Fritjof Capra's books will transform the way you think about problems and solve problems, or plan and design to solve a problem. I'm getting too technical, so please pardon me if this is becoming boring. But just an idea. I want to give you some value for the time you're giving me. This is going to be a long video. Everybody wanted a long video, so you're going to get a long video. So back to chess. So that's my passion. This is my passion. I play chess all the time, but I don't play online or competitive chess at the moment. See, online there's a lot of cheating happening. You know, people just play on 2 computers. So they'll put one computer here, one there. That computer's got a very powerful processor. They'll load a chess engine and they'll smash you on that computer. They'll just replicate the moves here and there and then play whatever the chess computer tells on the online game. And they'll just kill you. It's happening a lot. So online chess playing is probably not a good idea. If you want to become a good chess player, play it on the board and play it against yourself. That's what I do. So I've not played competitive chess yet. I will at some point. And when you play chess, you have a rating called an ELO rating. So I haven't got an ELO rating at the moment, but the way I play my chess, the way I play on my computer's chess engine, I've got the Stockfish engine, which is one of the most powerful engines. I think my ELO rating would be somewhere between 1200 and 1400, right? And one day I intend to cross 2000. That's how serious I am about chess. And 2000 rating is quite good because I'll put up a list of the world's best players at the moment. And as you can see, the Grandmaster at the moment is Magnus Carlsen. And his ELO rating is 2800. And the best way to do that, just like mathematics, is to play as many games as possible if you're interested. That's what I do. I play a huge amount of games. And learning wise, how do you learn? So from my very childhood days, I've been interested in chess and I've read many authors. So most I've read is Viswanathan Anand, who is an Indian Grandmaster. And then the most favorite chess player that I think I was the most influenced by and still am, is Mikhail Tal. He was a Soviet Russian chess player. He was Latvian basically. He was known as the King of Riga because of his incredibly unpredictable and attacking chess he used to play. And when you read his books and when you read his games, chess games, you can download and read the games, you'll see that Mikhail Tal could do things that nobody else can. Probably Magnus Carlsen can do the same things, but nobody else can do or terrorize their opponents like Mikhail Tal would do. He was so unpredictable, and he's the king as far as I'm concerned. So my favorite chess player is Mikhail Tal, and probably number 2 would be Magnus Carlsen. And I really enjoy, understanding, reading and watching chess games on YouTube and just analysis of how these amazing guys play chess. It's one of the most amazing things you can do, playing chess. A third passion I have probably is reading again about space. I like science a lot. I read a lot about space. If you want to read about space, there are 2 authors I can recommend. One is Carl Sagan. His books are pure wisdom. And the other one is Stephen Hawking, our own British author. Very interesting books about space, because nowadays everybody's talking about going to the Mars or whatever. It's important, but why is it important? Why is space exploration so important for humanity? Is what you'll get to learn from reading Carl Sagan, reading Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking is more focused on the physics of it, the astrophysics side. Carl Sagan will give you a philosophical standpoint on why space exploration is so important. So those things, basically. I'm also a very avid gardener. I absolutely love gardening. A lot of people requested if I could show you my garden. The problem is that we are in autumn, and in autumn gardens in the UK look horrible because nothing grows. It rains all the time and you can't even mow your lawn. So my lawn is that big now. The grass is that big. So there's no point. But next year, if I get good sunshine, I will definitely take you through my garden. Just show you how I do my gardening, how I grow stuff. Absolutely love doing it. It's one of my biggest passions, but all these passions are equally big for me. I absolutely love it. And the final one I'm going to talk to you is about motorcycling. And I'll tell you a little story. So when I was just checking the battery status, when in 2008, I lost my job when the financial crisis hit. And I applied for jobs and couldn't get anything for about 3 months. Christmas time, I just packed it in and I went to India. And what I did was quite astounding. It surprised me and everybody else. I bought myself a brand new motorbike and I went around India solo for about 35 days, 40 days. And it was basically one of the most amazing things I've done. And I was inspired by a BBC television program called The Long Way Round. I'll show you. Some of you might have watched that program. It was about 2 friends going from London to New York. the wrong way, the long way. So they went through Asia, through Russia, and then reached New York, entire length of US, the road. And it was just an amazing program. If you ever get a chance to either read the book or see the program, please do, because adventure sports, adventure, it just develops a human being beyond your wildest dreams. You will come back thinking, my God, I did that. 35 days. And the funny story is, when I bought the bike, the technician told me, sir, please do not ride the bike for more than 2 hours at a stretch, and don't take it over 65 kilometers an hour for the first 1,000 kilometers. I said, yeah, sure. It was an Indian bike. It was a Charisma 225cc. One of the nicest bikes I've ridden. Fantastic bike. Not very powerful, but powerful enough. And so I said, yeah, okay, yeah, I will do so. So I came back after a month, and after 35 days, and I had 10,000 kilometers on the clock. Everything which could be replaced was broken, so the fairings were all gone. The mudguard was completely gone. The chain cover was mangled because I went through all sorts of places, and I still had a smile on my face because the bike was a dream. It was riding like a dream. And when I went in for the service, he just looked at me completely shocked and probably annoyed at how I treated the bike. And he said, so, I mean, how can you do 10,000? You just bought the bike 1 month ago. I said, well, I just went on a trip and I'm really sorry I didn't follow your advice. He said, what do you want me to do? I said, well, just service it and give it back to me. And he serviced and replaced all the parts. It was the most... and then he jokingly asked me where I went, and I told him the story, and he said, it's the most bizarre thing he's ever seen. He's never seen anybody treat a brand new bike with such disdain. I said, I didn't intend to. It just happened. So that was my story. A little bit about me, a little bit about things that drive me. These are the things that really are my passion, and draws you a little picture about who I am. So let's move to the next part, and that's about the fragcomm. So I want to tell you my evolution as a connoisseur, as a fragrance connoisseur, along with the story of the fragcomm. I think it would be a beautiful one to do, because this story cannot be told by everybody, right? It can be told by people who have been in the fragcomm since the very start. So what is fragcomm? Well, it's a short for fragrance community. Internet, as you know, was different by the start of the millennium. By 2000, 2001, we were getting some internet groups, chat groups. They were either MSN or Yahoo. They're still there. And I was blissfully unaware of these things. And then suddenly one day I sort of bumped into a fragrance website called Base Notes. And, excuse me. And it had a forum of discussion forum. So before that, I think my first scent memory, if you like, the place where I actually looked at a fragrance and thought, my God, excuse me, was Fahrenheit. And I've told this story before, of how I got into fragrances. The Fahrenheit purchase told me that there's this world there which I need to open. I need to open the doors to that world and explore it. You get a feeling, right? When you do something and say, no, all right, there's something there. And Fahrenheit exposed me to that world. But I was a very slow adopter. And when I joined Base Notes forum, I think it was 2004, 2005, that's when I got my first taste of what is a community. What do you do? What does a community do for you? I found friends. I found discussions which were to my taste. It was amazing. Really enjoyed it. And it was all online. You just post messages and they respond. You do it nowadays as well. And it was really, really eye-opening. That is when I got into vintage fragrances. That is when I knew that there are fragrances from houses like Dior, Fahrenheit, obviously, from Guerlain. These houses, I started getting exposed to those houses. And then I've still got bottles that I bought after reading reviews on base notes. This is one of the bottles. This is a bottle from 2002. This is Dior Dune, Christian Dior, Purron. And this is around figs. It was a green sort of chypre-like smell. It's stunning. I mean, I've still saved a little bit. This is 2002 bottle. So that was my first baby steps into the world of informed purchases through fragcomm. That's how fragcomm started. Then around 2008, 2009, YouTube, fragcomm community burst into the scene as far as I'm concerned. It must have existed long before that, but it came through beautifully in 2008, 2009 for me. I started watching a few videos here and there. By 2011, I was a regular visitor to fragrance YouTube reviews, my first memory, and this will bring me to the scent of the day, because I didn't tell you my scent of the day. And my first memory of actually watching a review and buying a fragrance immediately was from a guy who later on became my absolute hero. I used to adore his fragrance reviews. His name was Christo, and his videos are still there. At the end of this video, I'll put a link in the description section of his channel and other channels that have inspired me. So everything I do in my channel, I sort of learned from Christo. Christo was a Canadian chap who used to live in Indonesia, and he was an English teacher. And he used to just do it on a webcam. He used to sit in his undershirt, because it must have been hot for him, and on a landing of a staircase. And he would do all these amazing videos. And the first fragrance I bought after watching a YouTube video was this, which is my scent of the day. John Varvatos Vintage. Must have been around, 2011, I would say. And this is my scent of the day. It's a fantastic chypre. Spicy, woody, herbal chypre. One of the most amazing fragrances which I haven't reviewed. I mean, I've got a little bit left, and I'm going to review it before it runs out. So that was my first sort of introduction to a fantastic reviewer and a fantastic fragrance purchase. I kept on watching Christo. Then obviously the fragrance community was adding amazing reviewers. By 2012, we had this very, very active and very vibrant fragrance community. There was Robes08. I really enjoyed his work, still do. And there was Drag Doc, I believe. There was Brooklyn Fragrance Lover. There's a Riz Frags. Riz Frags used to talk about niche fragrances. From the UK, there was the Sentiment Man, Raj. Raj was the first UK fragrance reviewer I got hooked onto. He used to do very, very straightforward, very nice reviews, still does. And I'm glad that he's coming back, because he had stopped doing reviews just like me. Greggy Boy was still as amazing. He's come back again. And later on, it was Mr. Smelly, Dan. So by 2012, the fragrance community was absolutely thriving. It was one of the most golden periods of YouTube fragrance community. It was fantastic. And like all things, all good things must come to an end. And that brings me to the third part of this video. So, by 2014, there comes the great disruptor. So what is disruptor? In technology field, a disruptor is something that changes the paradigm, that shifts the paradigm in such a way that new ideas come to fore, and the existing things have to adjust to this new idea, this disruptor. Just like let's say smartphones, when they came, they disrupted the existing mobile phone market and changed. New things happened. So disruptor came into the fragrance community in 2014 called, you guessed it, Jeremy Fragrance. Before Jeremy Fragrance, fragrance reviewers were mostly talking about their passion, knowledge, how a fragrance smells. When Jeremy came, he looked like a model. He was very good looking. He was talking about a product. Huge difference. A passion and a product. He talked about a product and what that product does for him. He was not a reviewer. He was not talking like a reviewer. But he started getting massive amounts of hits and subscribers. And that completely disrupted the existing reviewers who were there. You know, having 10,000 subscribers or 20,000 subscribers was a big deal in 2014. Jeremy crossed 100,000 in about 2 years. Unheard of. And he then hit 1 million very quickly. So he's currently at 2.4 million. He completely disrupted the fragrance review game, if you like. And most of the reviewers couldn't adjust to it. Some of them became a little bit jealous. Some of them tried to change the game. Some of them left. And he totally changed the game, if you like, of perfumery, of fragrance reviews. So after Jeremy, there was like 2 or 3 subsections of the fragrance community. The community feeling was gone because people were really wary of each other then. Because what came, there was a line. So existing fragrance reviewers, the passionate ones, the hobbyists were there. But most of the guys were crossing over to the Jeremy side, where the emphasis was on bottle, on style, on presentation rather than the smell. So there was a big change. When Jeremy started doing fragrances reviews with massive racks, with tons of fragrances behind him, people started copying him. And the whole thing can now, if you look back, you can see it. People who are relaxed, sat in the chair of the old school, talking about their fragrance hobby. People who have a shop-like, it was like a shop, it looked like a shop-like front, basically selling or pushing bottles. There was a huge difference. And some people hopped over to that side. Some people just stopped doing the reviews. And some people, like me, just were entering the game. Now, I didn't have any plans. So this was 2017. I didn't have any plans. I was enjoying both types of reviews. I could see what Jeremy was doing. And suddenly one day, sat here after work, I thought, what if I push a video and see what happens? And that brings me to the next chapter of this video, my early days. So, it was on 11th of February 2017. I decided that I should push a video out and see what happens. What happens if I make a video? I've been watching videos for, 8 years, 9 years. So I pushed out my first video. It was a Valentine's Day video. It still hasn't got 1,000 views. But when I pushed out that video, I learned one key lesson. Nobody could have said that I would get 50 views on a video in the first week. Even I couldn't have predicted that. It may sound very little, but think from the perspective of a complete unknown quantity, pushing out a video and getting 50 views in the first week. And that told me, and I didn't even show my face. I was so shy, if you like, so apprehensive that you can't, still, the video is still there. You can't see my face. You can just hear me talking about Valentine's Day pics. And that taught me that this beautiful world is out there. It's only you have to open the doors. You just have to open the doors and this beautiful world is waiting for you. And that's how my journey started. I obviously my second review was a work scent review, which is what I was very experienced with. I've just done another work scent review. And then I did vintage fragrances because vintage fragrances were something that I was very attracted to. And it can be a bit of a rabbit hole, vintage fragrances. I've had a lot of hits and misses with vintage fragrances, because you buy a vintage fragrance thinking, oh, this is going to be an amazing fragrance. Everybody's praising it. And you smell it and you don't like it. And it's happened to me the most in vintage fragrances. So I burned my hands going down the rabbit hole of vintage fragrances because I didn't like it. So I had to sell it back. Maybe I took a little bit of a loss. So some people have asked me for this story of mistakes or losses. Most of my losses have happened in the vintage fragrance game. But I did review Aramis Havana and many other fragrances. And they're still there. You can watch them. And that's how I started my journey. I got beautiful support and encouragement from lots of people. But just to tell you how long it takes in the fragrance game to earn subscribers, it took me 1 year and 3 months to cross 1,000. So I crossed 1,000 in May 2018. Jeremy crossed 1 million within 2 years of joining the fragcomm, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the disruptor effect. That's what he was doing. He was creating a presentation-based fan base. Presentation, his body, his looks, the rack with fragrances, the way he spoke. It was all about a brand, Jeremy, not about reviews. So there was 2 different families, if you like. And the third family, which emerged after that disruption, was a family of, if you like, third family of just people who are looking for differentiators. Right? So one is Jeremy style, which is get me a compliment, will this drop a panty? If it does, I'll get it. So that's one fan base. The other one is the old fragcomm. This is how the art of perfumery. And the third one came, which was basically differentiators. People who would go and talk about vintage fragrances or fragrances which are hard to get. Niche as well, but ultra niche. Because these are the guys who are looking for differentiators. If you got it, it's bad. If I've got it and it's very hard to get hold of, it's good. So they would talk about absolutely obscure fragrances. And they would have a little following, and they would just, one trend that happened was they would just completely belittle designer fragrances, because designer fragrances are easily available and they're very simple. So that group started growing as well, but thankfully that group hasn't grown too much. Because at the end of the day, a fragrance is a fragrance. It's a creation. You may not like it. That doesn't make the fragrance bad fragrance. It's just that you don't like it. And that thing was not coming through from that third group. And that was happening, but that's part of the game. So those were my early days. Now that brings me to the next chapter of the fragcomm. So now let's move to the next title of our story, next part of our story, Smoke and Mirrors. Go and get a beer. I got one. So, first time that I saw there was something odd about the fragrance community was in 2019. Creed released, was it 2019? I can't quite remember, but tied in with the release of Creed Viking. Creed Viking came out, and the day it came out, or maybe the next day, there were like 5-6 videos in the morning on my feed on YouTube, which says better than Ventus, better than Ventus, better than Ventus, this, that. By the end of the day, within 24 hours of Viking coming out, there were like 20 videos on Creed Viking. And these were the guys who had received a free bottle. And that's the first time it dawned on my head that there's something really odd about that. Because A, if you got a free bottle, how much time did you spend in testing that fragrance to actually claim it's better than a Ventus? And as we all know, and as history taught us, Viking wasn't better than Aventus. But all these guys didn't feel bad about making another video which was on similar lines, you know. So there's this deception started to happen, which troubled me a little bit, because they're your subscribers. If you go and tell your subscribers that something is very good and they trust you, they go and buy something and they don't like it, what's going to happen next? They're going to be thinking this guy is not dependable. And that was a bad situation as far as I'm concerned. I would be very uncomfortable doing that. So that sort of smoke and mirrors started happening quite a bit. And then suddenly you started getting a group of subscribers who came out of nowhere, and suddenly they had 100,000 subs, and they had the same pattern, fancy lighting, lots of bottles at the back, all, you know, like a shop front. And that started happening, and the word came out. It was called influencers, the new word, you know, influencers. And they started influencing. Houses like Initio, Parfums de Marley, Creed, they all had influencers. And that trend is still there. But now what has happened is all the subscribers, all the users, all the connoisseurs and fans of good fragrances have caught up. They've understood that there is this world of influencers and there's this tiny world of reviewers. And there's a big difference. People still follow the influencers, which is fine, but there's a big difference, and their purchasing decision is becoming more and more informed. You know, so the days are not gone when you get a fragrance, it releases, and there are 5 videos on YouTube the next day. I'm a reviewer. I know that if I say something about a fragrance and call it initial impressions, I have to follow it up with a detailed review. But that's not happening. So you're getting fragrance releases, fragrance review next day called initial impressions, and that's it. So this sort of smoke and mirrors game is going on, which is disconcerting, because anything that has been reviewed needs time. You're not giving it any time. You know, the day a fragrance is released, bang, next day comes out initial impression video, and that's it. And then obviously there's this army of top 10 videos, you know, top 10 when you want to drop panty, top 10 when you this, when you that. People have stopped doing reviews. It's just either first impressions and then top 10s. So that thing sort of left a bitter taste in my mouth, because that was not the fragcomm I knew, right? And having seen the fragcomm evolve into this beautiful, vibrant community in 2012, 2013, 2014, I was quite saddened at where it was going. And that time I was a reviewer, and whatever little I had, I did. I still do it. I do more single fragrance reviews than top 10s. I do top 10s. They are important, but they're not the only thing that is important. And full reviews are important, and full reviews take immense amount of time. You have to at least test it 5 or 6 times, different seasons, different body chemistry. I mean, I have completely used up one of my absolute favorite Chypres, and I haven't even reviewed it yet. So I'm not saying that it takes so much time for every fragrance, but it takes a bit of time to review a fragrance. You need to learn the fragrance. Anyways, so that smoke and mirrors started, as far as I am concerned, around 2017, 2018, maybe 2019, and it's carried on for a while, but it's coming towards its end, I think, because people have seen it. People have realized there's nothing wrong there. It's my money that's I'm going to have to part with if I listen to all that. So that's coming to an end, I hope. And that brings me to the next part of my video. Evolution. How did I evolve? Excuse me. Most of my evolution happened when I became a reviewer, and I started to think about fragrances from the point of view of my subscribers. So let me walk you through. Initial was obviously me as a consumer, looking at forums, watching my favorite YouTubers, buying fragrances based on their recommendations. That's exactly what a user does. Yeah, a fragrance community member does. That's how the first phase was for me. Then I became a reviewer and I started reviewing fragrances that I liked. And it was my subscribers watching the videos and then liking it or disliking it, whatever. So that's a natural progression, but there has to be an evolution. So initially, back in 2008, I was only buying designer fragrances. Then I bumped into a channel called Riz Frags, Ryan, Riz Frags 34. He used to talk about, he still does, he's a very nice chap. He's got a very nice, demeanor about him. Very, very classy person. So he used to talk about, niche fragrances only. And I started watching his reviews. Then Drag Doc, I believe. Then E from Simply Put Scents. And then Brooklyn Fragrance Lover. Those are the channels I started watching, and I started growing warm to the idea of niche. I was always a price conscious fragrance connoisseur. I was never going to spend £250 on a bottle, but it changed. I became a bit of a niche snob. Not a snob, but niche, you can call it a snob. I started only buying niche fragrances between 2013 and 2015, you could say. It was so much so that by 2016 I had a collection of about 200 fragrances, out of which 60% was niche. So I was basically becoming a niche snob. I quite like the complexity of these fragrances. I quite like the artistry of these fragrances. But I also, inside my head, there was this thing about niche being better than designers. I was there. And then I also went down the rabbit hole of vintage fragrances. So by 2016, my fragrance collection was about 270 to 80. 20% was vintage. And I would say 60% was niche. And the rest was designer. So designer became the third tier for me, in my mind. So the evolution happened when I became a reviewer. And after about 2 or 3 years of reviewing, I understood that people trust me a lot. And they also look forward to hearing about all sorts of fragrances, not just niche, right? So I started reviewing designers as well. And that's when my love for designers was rekindled. I started with designers and I started liking designers a bit more. That's when I started buying more and more designer fragrances and reviewing them on my channel and getting a nice reception from people. Not everybody can afford niche fragrances, you see. So I wanted to reach as many people as possible. And then I went down the route of budget fragrances. Rasasi was my first budget fragrance, and the person who got me into Rasasi's was Joy Min. I really enjoyed watching his channel. He's a fantastic guy, very down to earth. And he introduced me to the world of Middle Eastern fragrances. So I also started buying and reviewing them, and that was received beautifully. My most watched video is Top 10 Rasasi fragrances. So that was my evolution from a niche snob to a niche and vintage snob to a down-to-earth person reviewing everything for the masses. Yeah, budget fragrances, designers, niche, vintage, everything was there. But there was one key piece missing, and that happened when I went on my absence. Work pressure was huge. I couldn't focus on doing reviews all the time, so I went on a sabbatical, and that is when my evolution happened. So I'll talk about my second coming after the break. So my second coming. Now I've had to take a little bit of a break, my second beer, because I'm just not used to making such long videos. So let's have a beer and let's talk about what happened when I was on break. See, when I took my break, when I was not doing any reviews for 2 years, something very, very important happened. And that was probably my latest evolution, right? I told you how I went from a normal designer collector, person who enjoyed normal designer fragrances, to niche, to vintage, to being a niche snob, to being a reviewer, to being somebody who could appreciate everything. And then, probably the most important evolution. Let's have a sip of this beer first. I learned the art of getting into the mind of the perfumer and understanding why a certain perfume has been created. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but at least I can empathize with the creation. It happened to me when I was recently reviewing Myself by YSL and Burberry Hero EDT. Excuse me. I was able to zone in and understand from the perspective of the creator. There's a market for it, definitely. That's why a thing exists. And then who is this marketed towards? And as a reviewer, I think that's a very important skill to have, because it's easy to review a fragrance that you like and you appreciate, and easy to sort of slag off a fragrance that you don't really like and call it cheap or boyish or wasteful or whatever. But before criticizing, if you're able to understand why this was created, I think that's an important evolution. That is when you're becoming more rounded, more 360 degree, not just appreciating things that you like, but also able to understand why a certain thing exists and what market that thing acknowledges or caters to. And that was the biggest thing that happened to me. And my second coming, my second innings, if you like, of perfumery reviewing is going to be even more productive. It's going to be even more entertaining. It's going to be even more nicer, because now I can review everything. I used to review niche, I used to review designers, I used to review clones, but I never reviewed fragrances which I thought were pedestrian, didn't have that complexity, evolution. But now I can review those as well and say and call it out by saying this is the market that this fragrance is catering, rather than dissing it and then calling it something disingenuous. So that's an important evolution that's happened when I was not doing as many fragrance reviews. So that brings me to the final chapter of this video, and that is what lies ahead. Everybody talks about it, right? What lies ahead? What's the future? So the future, as far as I can see, and this is basically coming back to my profession. I'm a consultant. I get asked this question from my customers. What's the future of this thing? What's the future of fragcomm? So I think the whole hype cycle, it's a technical word, the hype cycle of influencers or non-reviewers reviewing fragrances has sort of tapered off, I think. It went with Jeremy, it went like this, so you didn't have to really know about fragrances to review fragrances. People bought into that. Now they're woken up because it's their money, they have to part with it. And I think there's some sort of decline of that happening. And the decline of the reviewer went down, is now starting to climb again. And there's going to be a meeting where the reviewer is going to take over, and the influencer will probably either hop over, like the reviewers used to hop over to the influencer game, will actually hop over, or there will be something of a meeting of minds. But gone are those days where you would release a fragrance and there would be a video in 6 hours time saying, oh, better than Aventus. That was a low point. Because it was untruthful, but then you can get away with it by saying, oh, it's my opinion, I think it's better. And the effect was on the consumer, right? So you can get away with that by saying it's my opinion, but the consumer has become smart and said, okay, it's not better than Aventus, and I'm not going to trust it because I will go and sample it. And that's what reviewers tell you. The reviewers never tell you to buy anything. They tell you go and sample it, because I think it's worth sampling. That's what I do. And that's what I think the road ahead is. The road ahead is where an informed person, the whole purpose of doing a review is not to become a celebrity, is to become a friend whose counsel you can depend on. So the consumer, more and more people will now watch multiple reviews rather than blindly, following X person and going and buying whatever they recommend. So that's the future, of, I think, the fragrance reviewing game. That's what's going to happen. Is there anything else that I should have covered? Let me know in the comment section. I believe I've covered everything that you had asked for in the video. I've told a little bit about myself. I've told you a little bit about my journey, about my successes and about my failures with fragrances, who influenced me, what I think of the fragcomm. This is the story of the fragcomm. And I think I've been able to narrate to you in an interesting and lucid way. If there's something that I should have covered, let me know. This fragcomm, as I know it, is a wonderful place. It's given me thousands of moments of joy. There's some little disappointments here or there, but mostly it's been a very joyous place for me. And a lot of people have taught me a thing or two about fragrance reviews. I'm going to mention their names in the description. You can go and check. You can check their content. Some people have stopped doing the reviews. Some people still do reviews. I've given you a lot of information. If you need more, come and just ask. If you want me to do something, just let me know in the comments. This video is a result of your comments. I listen to your comments. I'm dictated to by what you want. I'm hoping you really enjoy this review. Take care. Bye-bye.